The recent deadly strike on Kyiv, which claimed the lives of more than 30 people, marks a disturbing escalation in Russian aggression. Now, in a sharp response, President Donald Trump condemned the attack, calling it disgusting. And for the first time since tensions intensified, issued an ultimatum. Russia must sign a ceasefire process by August 8, warning that if diplomacy fails yet again, Washington will roll out new sanctions against Moscow. Now, to delve deeper into the topic, I'm joined by Garvan Walshe, CEO at Article 7 Intelligence for Democrats. Thank you so much for being with us here on TVP World this evening.
Thank you and good evening.
So, Galvin, the United States now has deployed its nuclear submarines closer to Russia because of this online argument that he had with former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. Now, I want to ask you, is this suggesting to us that Trump is actually, he isn't playing games and he's actually taking the Russian threat seriously, on Washington seriously? I mean, also, August 8th is just really days away. What kind of scenario are we looking at?
Well, first of all, the nuclear submarine thing is a bit of a game. It's just sending these submarines to a slightly different location, but they have very, very long-range missiles on them. It doesn't really matter where they are located in the world. I guess it's playing Medvedev, who frequently sounds off on his Twitter account at his own game. It's not really a significant issue. The August 8th deadline is more of a significant issue because we're seeing Trump getting more and more exasperated with his inability to bring Vladimir Putin to the table. He thought he could get a deal with him. He thought he could manage to persuade Putin to give up, make some kind of concessions and give up his war. But it's quite clear that Putin is pretty convinced that he's doing well. His troops are advancing. Yes, they're taking heavy casualties, but in Putin's view, this war is going well, and he thinks he's got the upper hand. He's got no reason to make peace right now. Unless the United States starts committing significant more military aid to Ukraine, he'll continue to have no reason to make peace.
Now, so let me ask you this. I mean, if August 8, let's say, passes without actually any movement, what are the risks of a deeper U.S.-Russia rift, standoff? Are we looking at a new phase of the war?
You may say it's a risk. I would say it's an opportunity or a restoration of what really the way that things ought to be. Trump has tried to have a more pro-Russian policy, but we're now seeing that doesn't work. Hopefully he'll be able to adjust, and means that the United States will revert to its traditional policy of trying to support the West. Even if Trump is not going to support the transatlantic alliance, it's quite clear, even with the trade deal with the European Union that was negotiated last week, he's not a friend of Europe, but he may be sufficiently annoyed by Russia that he has to adopt a more sensible and pragmatic policy, even if a little bit by accident.
Let me ask you this. How do you think that Europe is responding, and from the European perspective, to Trump's renewed focus on Ukraine and saying that, he's giving Putin this deadline? How is it being viewed?
I think Europe needs to not take this that seriously. Trump is not a man of his word. He likes spectacle. He likes to pretend that he can hold people to deals, but in practice he doesn't really manage to pull that off. He tends to get so obsessed with the optics of a deal that he overlooks the substance. Europe would be wise to continue building up its military, continue trying to support Ukraine as much as it can. In fact, nearly all American aid has now been replaced by European aid. The United States is supplying a few key components, but almost everything is European now. We've stepped into the breach, and we need to continue to do that. We need to build up our defense industries. We need to build up our production capacity, and that's what will give us leverage with both Russia and the United States.
Or you did say something there. You said that, Trump is just probably more talk than he is of action. But I mean, at this time, you also did mention that he is fed up. But wouldn't he, he said he's going to impose more sanctions on Russia. Is this something that you're saying he possibly now won't do?
He might do it, but even if he doesn't, it doesn't make that much of a difference. The important thing is that he doesn't lift the existing sanctions on Russia. And then, U.S.-Russian trade is pretty small. The real problem is that Russia is managing to evade a lot of the sanctions by selling oil, by selling up even to European countries by importing equipment that's been laundered through countries that border Russia. There's no real reason to think that the demand for cars in Tajikistan has exploded in the last 2 or 3 years. What's really going on is things are being filtered into Russia by the back door. We know that Russia is now getting increasing support from China, from North Korea. It needs that support to continue its military operations because its supplies are getting very heavily hit by the war effort and by the destruction that Ukraine is managing to wreak upon Russia. If Russia attacks Ukrainian civilians, Ukraine has understood that it makes much more sense to try and attack Russian infrastructure. There were attacks this morning on Russian oil refineries, very spectacular explosions as well. And this is interfering with Russia's ability to get fuel and equipment to the front. And this affects their performance, and it should hopefully make Russia take heavier casualties because they can't supply their men, they can't provide the right kind of equipment, and they can't then mount the kind of attack that they would need to do to take more territory back.
Garvan, let me shift gears here for a moment. I want to talk about the latest anti-corruption bill in Ukraine and that entire scenario that unfolded with Zelensky. Now, we've seen initially all of Zelensky's MPs, vote unanimously with him. Then, on whether it's to change the law or vice versa. But now, what is that move actually showing us about the state of democracy in Ukraine? And do you think that Zelensky damaged his reputation with all of this?
I mean, it's one of these things that, Ukrainians are worried about the war, but they think that corruption is almost as serious a problem as the war. They were very dismayed by what happened, and they got onto the streets and they protested, and Zelensky backed down. I mean, Ukraine is a country that is very decentralized, very sensitive about corruption. It has a history of removing corrupt presidents at the ballot box or, if necessary, in revolutions. I'm not sure why Ukraine thought this was a good idea, or Zelensky thought this was a good idea, because it clearly wasn't. Particularly when it's his major financial backer in the European Union wouldn't tolerate this. It's possible there may have been some change in the American position that might have, caused a different calculation. The Biden administration wouldn't have tolerated this either. So I think he has been chastened by this and has realized that while he is the war leader and people respect that in Ukraine, they want to see a Ukraine that is a democracy, that has the rule of law, that fights against corruption and ensures that the resources that are being pumped into Ukraine are going to fight Russia and fight Ukraine's enemies, not to line the pockets of people who happen to be in power at the moment.
But I mean, how can Ukraine reassure its international partners, for instance, that it wouldn't repeat such a move? How can Europe be certain?
Well, by not repeating it, I mean, it's very clear that this backfired. They shouldn't try and do the same thing again. They need to understand that Ukrainian society won't tolerate this kind of attacks on independent institutions, and instead they should continue to reinforce them and realize that their success is going to come with getting closer and closer to the European Union. That means they're going to have to continue to take strong measures against corruption, take strong measures to implement aspects of the single market and other parts of EU law. And if they do that, their economy will grow stronger, even under wartime conditions. And this is the kind of thing that Ukrainians want to see.
Let me ask you this. Germany pledged 2 Patriot missile systems to Ukraine. Do you think it's going to change anything for Russia?
At the moment, Patriot missiles are one of the few systems that we have in quantity that are able to defend against Russian ballistic missiles. There are European systems that can do the same thing as well, but they so far can't be manufactured in large numbers. So it's important. Russia has upgraded its systems. It's launched these devastating attacks on civilian infrastructure in Ukraine, and they need air defense to be able to protect their population. They certainly are protecting their population as a military strategy. This is probably a mistake by Russia. It's also a reflection of its weak technology. It's unable to attack military installations with precision, so it resorts to terror tactics against the civilian population. And Ukraine needs to be able to continue to defend its cities against this barbaric and indiscriminate attack. It's important that we keep supplying these kind of weapons to Ukraine and ensure that it has the wherewithal and the ammunition, as well as the missile systems, to be able to defend itself, against the Shahed drones, and also to be able to preserve what it can of the livelihood and the economy of its country, because this is how the war is going to be won, by Ukraine continuing to be able to sustain its population, by Ukraine continuing to be able to sustain an economic development, to sustain its military industry, and with Russia being unable to do so and finding more and more difficulties to supply its military machine.
Thank you so much, Garvan Walshe, CEO, Article 7 Intelligence for Democrats, for being with us here on World News Tonight.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
And that's all for this edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching and stay with us for more news and features.